Welcome to Paskvan Podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps this channel. Tonight, we're venturing into a story that begins on a really ordinary summer night in rural Kentucky, but it quickly spirals into something truly extraordinary, something that has, well, haunted a family and captivated imaginations for decades now. Imagine a quiet evening, crickets chirping, dogs maybe dozing, then suddenly some unknown force descends. It traps a family in their home, turning this peaceful little farm into like a battleground against the impossible. We've gathered a stack of incredible accounts, witness testimonies, historical analysis to try and unravel a really chilling mystery, the Hopkinsville Goblins.
Yeah, this isn't just some campfire tale. It's really a foundational event in the lore of the unexplained. It's a cornerstone for close encounter research and just a profound case study in human fear perception. Our mission today is to really unpack the raw fear, the undeniable evidence of a struggle there, and the baffling contradictions that make sure this story remains this enduring enigma. We'll explore what happened, how people reacted when faced with something truly inexplicable, and critically analyze why this particular incident resonates so deeply, why it's embedded itself in our collective consciousness, defying simple explanations even today. The real intrigue, I think, lies not just in the what, but the how and why, how this narrative has persisted, constantly challenging, our understanding of reality.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our story starts August 21st, 1955. Christian County, Kentucky. If you can, picture it. Quiet farmlands, stretching out under this big sky, way out from any city. Life there moves slow, the rhythm of summer, dictated by the sun, the seasons. You'd hear crickets, maybe an owl far off, dogs sleeping on porches, that kind of deep stillness that feels, well, totally predictable. It was a place where, honestly, routine was everything. Nothing truly out of the ordinary was supposed to happen. And the setting for this encounter was the Sutton farmhouse. Just an unassuming clapboard home, pretty simple. And this is crucial. It had no running water, no telephone. That detail speaks volumes about just how isolated they were. Back in 55, no phone. That's complete disconnect. Any emergency, getting word to the authorities, that meant a physical journey, took time. And this isolation, this lack of instant connection, becomes absolutely critical as the night unfolds. It traps them not just physically, but psychologically too.
Exactly. That lack of immediate connection. It meant everything that happened was intensely personal, confined right there within those four walls in the yard. There was no quick call for help, no, quick verification from someone miles away. The terror was just contained, amplifying the psychological hit on everyone inside.
And trapped inside this, modest two-room house were 11 people. Not just a core family, but this extended group of family and friends enjoying the end of a long, hot summer day. We're talking Elmer Lucky Sutton, his wife Vera, his mother Glennie Langford, his half-brother Billy Ray Taylor, and several kids aged like 7 to 17, just a close-knit group, sharing stories, probably laughing, life unfolding predictably. But that routine, it was about to be completely shattered. Ordinary was ending. Something totally out of place was about to arrive, terrifyingly.
And it began subtly, almost innocently, A quiet ripple before the storm hits. Around 7 p.m., air still heavy, sunset glowing. Billy Ray Taylor steps outside to fetch water from the well. He goes out into the fading light, summer evening sounds all around him. But what he sees next, it just stops him cold, breaks the spell. He described a bright object streaking across the sky, glowing with multiple shifting colors, trailing what looked like fire, before it just vanished dramatically into the dense trees beyond the farmhouse. His immediate thought, especially, given the 50s context, a flying saucer, a craft from somewhere else.
Wow. That's quite a thing to see. So how did the others react, especially if, as you hinted, he had this reputation for maybe stretching the truth? I mean, a flying saucer landing in the woods nearby isn't exactly something you hear every day, right?
You really hit on a crucial point there about perception, about bias. The challenge is immediate. How often do we just dismiss the first signs of something really out of the ordinary, especially if it comes from someone we're already a bit skeptical of? The Suttons, well, understandably, they laughed him off. They knew Billy Ray sometimes exaggerated things, so this story of a spaceship, pure fantasy to them. Overactive imagination, it's natural, right? A self-protective reaction when something so wild comes from a source you question. Yet that first sighting, even though they dismissed it, it planted this little seed of unease. A quiet hum of the unknown crept into the house. And as we know, the night was really only just beginning.
Exactly. That little note of unease, that flicker of the truly unexplainable. It was already inside the farmhouse. And yeah, the night was far from over. About an hour later, maybe 8 p.m., the whole atmosphere outside shifts. Gets sinister. The farm dogs, usually lazy in the heat, they start barking like crazy. But this wasn't their usual barking. It was guttural, growling, snapping, like a real threat was there. and they were just fixated intensely on the tree line at the edge of the yard.
Right. Farm animals, they often act like an early warning system, don't they? They pick up on things before we do. Their agitation, so sudden and frantic, it must have screamed to the family that something was seriously wrong out there.
And as the Suttons peered out into the dark, straining their eyes, what they saw next would just change everything, rip away any sense of security. Emerging from the shadows was this small figure, no more than 3 feet tall. Its appearance was chillingly specific and consistent across all the accounts later. An oversized, kind of bulbous head, way too big for its tiny body. Long, spindly arms almost reaching the ground, ending in these talon-like claws that apparently gleamed in the faint moonlight. Sharp, menacing, thin legs, almost fragile-looking, but it moved in this unnerving way. Big, pointed ears, jutting out like bat wings, just a profoundly alien shape. But the most terrifying feature, the one that burned into their memory, the eyes. Large, glowing, inhuman, shining with this intense yellow light like headlights in the night, fixed right on the farmhouse, unwavering, predatory. And it moved with this eerie, almost silent glide, like its feet barely touched the ground, added to the whole surreal, deeply unsettling vibe. This wasn't a shadow, it wasn't an animal, it wasn't a trick of the light. This was something else entirely, something that defied biology, logic, everything.
That description of the movement, the eerie glide, the almost floating, that's particularly unsettling. Because it just immediately defies what we expect from nature, right?
Yep.
Living things usually have a gait and impact. This weightless, silent movement signals something fundamentally other.
It really does. And seeing that, well, the line between the ordinary world and something totally inexplicable just vanished. Lucky Sutton and Billy Ray Taylor, faced with this bizarre thing, they instinctively grabbed their guns. A shotgun and a .22 rifle. They step outside, ready to confront whatever it was, adrenaline pumping. As they come out into the dim yard, the creature creeps closer. And then, in this gesture that was either surrender or maybe chilling mockery, it raises its clawed hands. Terrified, desperate, the men open fire.
Yeah, the blast of the shotgun, the crack of the rifle must have shattered the night's quiet. A shocking sound out there. And the creature, hit by the gunfire, it recoiled. But it didn't fall naturally. It flipped backward, tumbling into the darkness, almost like a weightless ragdoll. For a split second, they must have thought, okay, it's over. Relief. But when they cautiously moved forward, hearts pounding, there was nothing. No body, no blood, no trace. It just vanished. And what makes this first encounter so chilling is the immediate reappearance. Almost like it was testing them, showing an unnerving awareness. No sooner had they processed its disappearance than, from the roof of the farmhouse, this distinct scratching sound starts up. Another figure peers down, those glowing eyes again, fixed on the family below. The men, still reeling, raise their guns, fire again. But this one doesn't fall. It just floats off the roof, totally unharmed, and vanishes into the trees again. This completely shatters the idea that a bullet will solve this. It introduces this terrifying new element, invincibility. Or at least this profound, almost supernatural resistance to normal force. This wasn't just an attack anymore. It felt like a psychological siege designed to break them.
And inside the house, that invincibility, that eerie resistance, it just sent the panic through the roof. Unbearable. Children screaming, cries piercing the air, women openly weeping, sobbing, gasping in fear. Glennie Langford, the matriarch, she resorted to praying aloud, her voice trembling in the flickering lamplight, a desperate plea for divine help against this darkness. But despite everything they did, the creatures kept coming back, relentless, a terrifying wave. For the next several hours, the Suttons endured what you can only call an unceasing siege. These creatures circled the house persistently, appearing at windows, scratching at doors with those talons, climbing onto the roof, their metallic forms glinting in the moonlight. Every time the family fired, these beings would tumble or float away, only to return moments later, seemingly unfazed, like they were impervious to bullets. Witnesses later said their forms shimmered as if made of metal, an insurmountable barrier. Imagine firing shot after shot, seeing the impact, seeing the creature react, but knowing deep down it was useless. The Suttons fired until their arms ached, until the house itself was literally riddled with bullet holes. Stark evidence of their desperation, the sheer number of rounds they fired trying to repel the unknown.
The sheer futility of it all. That's such a crucial element here. It speaks directly to the psychological torment of that night, doesn't it? The atmosphere inside that farmhouse must have been unbearable. Claustrophobic, a chamber of fear. With only oil lamps flickering, the shadows would have danced wildly, distorting everything familiar, turning ordinary objects into frightening shapes in the periphery. The children, beyond consoling, screaming, clinging to their mothers, the mothers whispering desperate prayers between sobs, trying to find some solace in faith. Glennie Langford, a woman of strong conviction, her prayers spoken aloud must have been this desperate plea against the unknown, a last resort. And the men, Exhausted, terrified, acutely aware their guns weren't working, they still kept watch at the windows. Guns ready, eyes straining into the dark, constantly scanning for those horrifying glowing eyes. The sheer endurance of that terror, that feeling of being hunted, helpless in your own home. It creates this profound human story at the heart of the mystery. It's not just what they saw, but the lasting psychological scar of being so utterly vulnerable.
It truly is. This wasn't just a quick scare, it was an ordeal. Hours passed like this, the night stretching on, feeling like an endless wave of fear. Finally, sometime after 11 p.m., the creatures seemed to withdraw. The yard fell silent again. The scratching stopped. The family, utterly exhausted, nerves frayed, stayed huddled inside, too afraid to sleep, just waiting for morning light for some sense of safety. As dawn approached, painting the sky gray, they made a desperate decision. They had to leave, get help. Staying wasn't an option. Gathering belongings, the traumatized kids, moving fast but quiet, they fled the farmhouse. Piled into their car, drove into Hopkinsville nearby, nerves shattered, their story fragmented by terror, barely coherent. When they burst into the police station, the officers saw not just one person, but 11 people with raw, undeniable fear on their faces, their pallor, their trembling, their desperate pleas. This was no prank, no drunken fantasy. Something genuinely terrifying had happened out at the Sutton farm.
And that's what makes the police response so telling, so crucial to the credibility of this case. Officers initially thought, yeah, maybe a late-night prank. A joke gone too far. But looking at the Suttons, 11 people, frantic, pale, visibly shaken, none drunk, their story pouring out with desperate conviction, they quickly realized this terror was absolutely real. Captain Russell Greenwell of the Hopkinsville PD later said, "These weren't the kind of people who would normally run to the police. Something scared them, something beyond reason." Which raises an important question. What does it take for hardened law enforcement, used to dealing with all sorts, to set aside skepticism and take a story like this seriously? It really highlights the impact of the family's raw, visceral fear. Their collective terror was powerful, even without tangible proof of creatures. The officers couldn't dismiss the human impact. So within the hour, acknowledging the gravity, they called in reinforcements. State troopers, county deputies, even military police from nearby Fort Campbell. A convoy headed out to that isolated farm, lights cutting through the dark roads, driven by this family's desperate plea.
And when that convoy police military finally got to the Sutton farm, the scene told a story of the struggle, even if the attackers were gone. The farmhouse was, just as they said, riddled with bullet holes, undeniable proof of the gunfire. Windows shattered, doors scarred, the siding splintered, spent shell casings littered the ground, inside and out, more proof they'd fired wildly, desperately. It was clear this family had been in a prolonged, violent conflict. However, despite all this evidence of a fight, the officers found no bodies, no blood, no tracks in the hard, dry earth, no physical evidence whatsoever of the little men with glowing eyes the family described so consistently. What they found was the aftermath of sheer panic. Holes blasted through walls, curtains torn, that heavy, acrid smell of gunpowder hanging in the air. But while no creatures were there then, neighbors did confirm hearing expensive gunfire, seeing flashes of light for hours, so they corroborated a major disturbance. By 2 a.m., with no immediate threat, the lawmen finished their initial check and left, leaving the Suttons alone again in that bullet-scarred house. You'd think after all that it would be over. The terror banished with the authorities gone. But chillingly, the night wasn't finished with the Suttons.
You're right, it wasn't over. And this next bit is maybe one of the most unsettling parts. It transforms it from maybe a random attack into something that feels calculated. No sooner had the authorities gone, the last police car lights faded into the distance, than the scratching began again. From the woods, the same eerie movement, the same glowing eyes reappeared. The family later swore, with chilling conviction, that the creatures had simply been waiting for the police to leave, which is unnerving. It implies this intelligent awareness, this patient, haunting malevolence. Once more, the siege began. Creatures peered through windows, faces pressed to the glass, eyes boring into the terrified family. Scuttled onto the roof, claws scratching across the shingles. Hovered at the edge of the clearing, their metallic sheen glinting. A silent, watchful threat. Again the guns roared. Again the figures flipped and rolled but wouldn't stay down. That same baffling immunity to bullets. This second attack lasted until the first gray light of dawn. Only when the sun finally rose, casting undeniable light, did the creatures finally vanish into the woods, leaving the Suttons utterly exhausted, hollow-eyed, profoundly traumatized. Survivors of a night they would never, ever forget. This second wave, right after the police left, it's crucial. It intensifies that feeling of being specifically targeted, of these sources having almost a strategic awareness of human intervention. It deepens the mystery, makes it feel less random, more like a deliberate psychological assault.
It really does make you wonder, what was their goal? just curiosity, or something more deliberate, more malicious. During the interviews later with police and press, the Suttons gave remarkably consistent descriptions, detailed, a testament to how vivid and terrifying it was. They consistently said the creatures were about 3 feet tall, small but significant, oversized heads dominating their tiny bodies, an unsettling top-heavy look, huge, pointed, bat-like ears, adding to the non-human appearance. Long, spindly arms almost reaching the ground, ending in those distinct talon-like claws, and the eyes, universally the most terrifying feature, glowing that intense, unwavering yellow, boring into you. Their bodies seemed to shimmer, reflecting light like polished metal, almost artificial constructed. They didn't walk normally. They seemed to float or glide just above the ground, silently, eerily. When shot, they didn't just fall. They'd tumble weightlessly, almost acrobatically, impossibly, then right themselves naturally, easily, and come back. Seemingly unfazed. Their movements were described as jerky, almost robotic, like puppets on invisible strings, no natural flow. And the Suttons were adamant. There were multiple creatures, maybe a dozen, appearing, disappearing, attacking in waves, showing absolutely no fear of the gunfire.
And when this story hit the local papers, it just spread like wildfire. Escalated fast from a local oddity to a national sensation. Headlines screamed things like, "Little men besiege Kentucky farmhouse," and dramatically, "Hopkinsville family battles spacemen." Reporters flocked to the Sutton farm, eager for interviews, notebooks open, cameras flashing. Photographers snapped pictures of the bullet holes, the broken windows, turning private terror into a public spectacle. The Suttons, bewildered, still traumatized, found themselves telling this incredible story again and again. And remarkably, despite the trauma, the repetition, the core details stayed consistent. Glowing eyes, metallic sheen, floating movements. Skeptics naturally rolled their eyes, quick to dismiss the fantastic claims. But many others, gripped by the sheer audacity of it, the palpable fear the family showed, listened with uneasy fascination. The number of witnesses, 11 people, the consistency, it gave the story a weight that was hard to just dismiss as hallucination or lies. For a community used to talking crops and church services, the idea of goblins or aliens roaming their woods, both thrilling and terrifying. A reminder their predictable world might not be so predictable. This is where a local incident really transcends its context, enters the realm of public narrative, where facts meet interpretation and fear often gives way to fascination, becoming a story the whole community and soon the nation grappled with.
And as often happens with stories like this, sensational, inexplicable, the intense public attention quickly became a heavy burden for the Suttons. They soon grew weary of it all, just wanted that quiet normalcy back, the peace that had been stolen. Strangers, drawn by headlines, showed up constantly, some curious, some openly mocking. Reporters trampled their yard, probing for more details, digging into their lives. The kids faced relentless teasing at school about their space visitors, adding emotional pain to the terror. The family wanted help, maybe understanding. Instead, they became local legends, half admired, half ridiculed. Their lives changed forever. Accused of hoaxing for publicity, the usual cynical take, or suggested they were drinking or suffering mass hallucination from stress. But the Suttons denied it all, fiercely, consistently. Glennie Langford, the matriarch, known for her honesty, her character, she stood by her story till the day she died. "I wouldn't lie," she told interviewers years later, voice still firm. "These were not little green men. They were something else, something we couldn't understand." To the Suttons, it wasn't a story to debate. It was a deeply lived, agonizing experience. Etched in fear, trauma. A night the ordinary world cracked open and something from beyond stepped through, leaving a permanent mark not just on their house, but on their souls.
Yeah, and when daylight fully came, showing the chaos, shattered windows, splintered frames, bullet holes, casings everywhere, the story moved from immediate terror to formal inquiry. The police returned the next morning to take formal statements, wisely interviewed the 11 witnesses separately, standard procedure, right, to expose inconsistencies. But what they found instead was remarkable, unnerving consistency across everyone. Creature size, glowing eyes, metallic sheen, that unnatural floating movement. Each person independently described the same terrifying nightmare. Virtually no significant deviations. The authorities documented the physical evidence of the struggle. Bullet holes, broken windows. Neighbors confirmed hearing extensive gunfire for hours. Confirmed a profound disturbance. Yet the central contradiction, the core tension of this whole case remained stark. Without physical evidence of the creatures, no bodies, no tracks, no residue, the police had little more than compelling, consistent, genuinely terrified testimony. Police Chief Russell Greenwell admitted to reporters, these people were genuinely frightened. They weren't making this up. Something frightened them badly that night. Which brings us back to that important question. In the absence of traditional physical proof, how much weight do we give to consistent, terrified testimony from multiple credible witnesses whose lives were undeniably traumatized? It's the core challenge of the case. This stark contrast between undeniable human impact and missing scientific evidence.
Right, and without that concrete proof of the beings themselves, explanations started flying. From the fantastical to the stubbornly mundane, everyone trying to impose order on this chaos. One of the earliest, most persistent theories: great horned owls, mistaken identity. Think about it. Large, luminous yellow eyes could look glowing in the dark. Tufted ears, maybe mistaken for the pointed ones. Their flight is silent, often a smooth glide. In the dark, adrenaline pumping, maybe the family fired wildly at shadows and birds, imagination twisting wildlife into monsters. But here's the pushback. Could an owl really float like they described? More importantly, could it withstand repeated shotgun blasts, rifle fire, close range without a trace? No feathers, no blood. That takes a pretty big leap of faith. Pushes the boundaries of what we know about owls. Then there was that, well, rather bizarre monkey theory. Some speculated a circus passed through weeks before, lost some monkeys. The idea was these escaped primates, maybe even in costumes if you really stretch it, startled the Suttons. Led to overreaction. The family dismissed this with scorn, understandably. Again, the basics don't fit. No monkey floats, no monkey withstands a barrage of gunfire. And then, of course, the cynical voices, always there, accusing the Suttons of outright hoaxing for fame or money, notoriety. Yet no evidence of trickery was ever found. Police, investigators, nobody found anything. And the price they paid, decades of ridicule, unwanted attention, shattered peace, hardly seems worth it for fleeting fame. If anything, their lives got much harder because of this, not better.
It's those inconsistencies, those contradictions between the extraordinary testimony and the mundane explanations that really define this case. Keep it alive. Among ufologists, though, the Sutton case became an instant classic, almost immediately. Billy Ray's initial sighting of that bright object streaking across the sky fit perfectly with the 1950s flying saucer reports, culturally resonant. To believers in ET visitation, the creatures were clearly alien beings. Extraterrestrial visitors, maybe scouts from a landed craft hidden nearby. The detailed descriptions, glowing yellow eyes, metallic, shimmering skin, fueled speculation. They weren't biological in the usual sense. Maybe advanced alien tech, robots, probes sent to observe. And the most compelling detail for this theory, the one proponents always highlight, the creature's apparent immunity to bullets. That seemed to strongly support the idea of non-biological forms, or forms with incredibly advanced defenses, way beyond us. The striking thing here is how Hopkinsville provided this tangible, terrifying close encounter, resonated deeply with the growing UFO fascination of the era. It wasn't just vague lights anymore, it was beings, interacting directly, violently even, with an ordinary American family. A chillingly specific data point for ufology.
And on the flip side, for people more tuned into, like folklore and oral tradition, others saw the story through that lens. Sutton creatures, their weird appearance, supernatural resilience, seemed to echo older legends. Fairies, goblins, trickster spirits said to haunt rural places. Their glowing eyes, their almost magical ability to evade harm, reappear after being shot. Echoed stories told for centuries in the Appalachian Hills and beyond. Strange beings woven into local myth. The way the community reacted, too, followed that pattern. A terrifying story repeated in homes, taverns, grew larger with retelling, morphed slightly, became part of local identity. From this angle, maybe it wasn't literal aliens, but manifestation of archetypal fears, given a modern twist by the UFO craze. So were they visitors from another world, an unknown species? Or something far older woven into Kentucky myth, the human collective unconscious? It's a compelling question, makes you think about how different frameworks try to make sense of the inexplicable.
Stepping back a bit, there were also rumors the military was really interested, a common thread in these unexplained stories back then. Fort Campbell, a major army base, was just a short drive away. And military police did accompany the civilian officers that first night. That proximity, that early involvement, it fueled speculation. Some whisper the Air Force, under Project Blue Book, their investigation into UFOs from 52 to 69, had quietly looked into Hopkinsville. Filed reports never released. In an era when the government was actively tracking weird stuff, often for national security reasons, the idea of covert military investigations seemed plausible to many. However, if any official records were kept, intelligence gathered, they've never surfaced publicly. Not in any verifiable way. What remains are secondhand accounts, ongoing speculation. Adds another layer of intrigue, unanswered questions, raises questions about official scrutiny, transparency, especially with events that defy easy categories, often shrouded in secrecy, leaves fertile ground for conspiracy theories, lingering doubts.
For the Suttons, the immediate aftermath, well, the police inquiry confirmed their sincerity but offered little relief. While police and reporters confirmed their genuine terror, the relentless media scrutiny, the ongoing ridicule from skeptics, it became unbearable. The family grew weary of strangers gawking at their property, of reliving the trauma in interviews. Eventually, they retreated from public life, refused most interviews, tried to escape the scrutiny, regained some peace, but the mystery itself never died. The Hopkinsville encounter just refused to be solved neatly, defied simple categorization. It lingered on the edge of belief, that space where fact and legend blur. The puzzle pieces just wouldn't fit perfectly, left this haunting incompleteness. The bullet holes proved they fired wildly, desperately. But at what? The glowing object, seen by one man, Billy Ray, never officially confirmed. The creatures, described vividly, consistently by 11 people, yet left no tracks, no remains, no tangible physical evidence for science to analyze. Every single explanation proposed had major flaws, fell short. Owls. Couldn't explain the floating, the metallic sheen, the bullet immunity. Monkeys. Couldn't explain shimmering bodies or, crucially, surviving gunfire. The UFO angle explained the object, maybe, but not the bizarre, almost toy-like, taunting behavior. Seemed like they were deliberately messing with this terrified family, not conducting some scientific observation. The Hopkinsville encounter exists in this perfect, frustrating, compelling space between explanation and mystery, refusing to be neatly packaged. A true anomaly.
And this refusal to be solved, this enduring paradox, that's exactly why Hopkinsville has such a lasting, profound legacy, far beyond that Kentucky farm. The compelling thing here is how an intense, terrifying personal experience gets distilled, reinterpreted by popular culture, transforms a specific horror into this widely recognizable, sometimes even playful trope. While the press initially called them goblins, drawing on the Suttons' descriptions of small, otherworldly beings as the story spread, another phrase took root: little green men. Even though the Suttons never described them as green, more metallic, or silver, that catchy shorthand stuck, became synonymous with alien visitors. The Hopkinsville case is often credited with popularizing, cementing little green men as this pervasive cultural archetype for ETs. From pulp magazines to cartoons, sci-fi films, toys, the idea of mischievous, sometimes menacing alien visitors took hold, largely fueled by this account, shifting the terrifying reality for the Suttons into a broader, more palatable, iconic cultural narrative.
That cultural impact is truly profound. A fascinating example of how one event can just reverberate through popular imagination for decades. The Hopkinsville Goblins and their various interpretations inspired filmmakers, writers, artists, became a touchstone for alien encounters. Take the 1986 cult horror film Critters, small, menacing, bullet-resistant aliens besieging an isolated farmhouse. Openly modeled on the Kentucky case, admitted it. You can even see echoes, themes in huge films like Spielberg's E.T. Strange Visitors, Ordinary Families, Isolated Homes, or M. Night Shyamalan's Signs family grappling with invasion on their farm. In UFO literature, Hopkinsville is universally cited, a benchmark. Studied alongside Roswell, Kecksburg, other famous unresolved encounters. Appears in encyclopedias of the unexplained, documentaries, even comic books. Its influence is undeniable. So yeah, next time you see a little green man in a movie, book, cartoon, remember the Sutton family. Their night of terror that, in many ways, helped birth that enduring legend.
It's a remarkable transformation, isn't it? How a terrifying personal experience gets woven into a community's identity. In Kelly, Kentucky, the small community where the farm was, the story's been completely reclaimed as heritage. Evolved from terror to pride, every year they have the Kelly Little Green Men Days Festival. It's fascinating. Blends the festive with the mysterious. Carnival rides, live music, alongside serious lectures from UFO researchers, discussions on paranormal stuff, displays of memorabilia from the encounter. What was once pure terror for a family has, paradoxically, become this vibrant point of local pride. A tourist attraction. Vendors sell green alien hats. Kids paint their faces like aliens. The town collectively celebrates the goblins that put them on the map. For many visitors, yeah, it's lighthearted fun. But for locals, it's also this powerful reminder of the strange, enduring legacy their community carries. A powerful example of how a community grapples with and ultimately redefines a traumatic or perplexing event. Turns it into something fostering identity, community, even celebration. A unique cultural lens on the unexplained.
And it just continues to be fertile ground for conflicting perspectives. Shows that human need to categorize, explain, even when faced with the truly inexplicable. Folklorists, for instance, see it as this rich example of how stories grow, evolve, get reinterpreted. They trace how the Suttons' original account, metallic beings, glowing eyes, morphed into the convenient green men from outer space shorthand. Shows the power of cultural narratives. How the tale traveled from urgent news reports to kitchen table retellings, pulp fiction, Hollywood screens. For dedicated UFO believers, researchers, The case remains one of the strongest, a testament to close encounters of the third kind. They point to the multiple witnesses, the consistency, the sheer terror of the family as significant evidence. Unlike many UFO stories, fleeting lights, lone observers Hopkinsville had 11 people who stood by their accounts for years despite ridicule. To them, the lack of traditional physical evidence doesn't negate the credibility. Maybe it just highlights the limits of our tools when facing truly anomalous phenomena. Skeptics, on the other hand, still argue misidentification, group hysteria. The owl theory remains popular, highlighting owl characteristics: yellow eyes, ears, silent glide, suggesting in the dark, adrenaline pumping, maybe belief in weird stuff already there. They mistook wildlife for monsters. Others say the story got exaggerated under stress. Gunfire, fear, group panic amplified ordinary events into extraordinary ones. Collective delusion. Without hard evidence, skeptics say the goblins remain a compelling story, fascinating Americana, but not proven fact, yet. Even those ardent skeptics can't fully dismiss the Sutton sincerity. Their fear was palpable, details unwavering, lives undeniably disrupted by attention they never sought. That much, at least, is undeniable.
And that undeniable human element, that raw, visceral experience of fear, that's truly what keeps the Hopkinsville story alive, resonant. Decades later, it's not just the tantalizing possibility of aliens or goblins. It's the profound human experience at its core that grips us. The idea of a family trapped in their home, under siege by unknown, unyielding forces, resonates with a primal, deep fear in all of us. It's a siege narrative as old as folklore. Humans barricaded against the night, the unseen scratching at the door, an existential threat highlighting our vulnerability, isolation. For the Suttons, it wasn't legend, theory, debate. It was lived, traumatic experience. Hours of sustained terror. Kids crying, guns blasting, shadows moving, constant threat outside. Whether the creatures were owls, ETs, interdimensional beings, something else. The fear, the desperation, the psychological impact were profoundly, undeniably real. Which raises that important question. Why do we collectively remember certain stories that defy easy explanation? Stories pushing the boundaries of our understanding. It's not just about aliens or goblins. It's about confronting the edges of our perception, challenging our rational frameworks, contemplating the terrifying possibility. The world isn't as predictable, as safe, as we like to believe.
So, what does this all mean for us? Was it mass hallucination, misidentified owls, or something truly inexplicable visiting Christian County that night? The Hopkinsville Goblins endure because they exist in that perfect, unsettling space between explanation and mystery. Too detailed to dismiss outright, yet too strange, lacking conventional proof to accept without deep question. The story resists closure, refuses to be neatly packaged, and in that resistance, it thrives, transforming local terror into a global icon of the unexplained. It reminds us how easily the familiar can become terrifyingly strange, how a quiet farmhouse, a symbol of peace, can become a desperate battlefield, how a single terrifying night can stretch, not just into memory, but into enduring, potent legend. The Suttons are gone now, their direct testimony silenced by time, but their story remains. A tale told in hushed tones, a headline in archives, a festival banner flapping in a Kentucky breeze.
Exactly. This story forces us to confront the limits of our rational explanations. The profound impact of genuine collective fear is a chilling testament to the power of eyewitness experience when faced with phenomena that just don't fit our known reality. And it leaves us with this final provocative thought. Somewhere in the woods, not just in Kentucky, but in the imagination of everyone who hears this story, the goblins still glide, their glowing eyes watching, waiting, returning again and again to that farmhouse where fear once reigned supreme. What if sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that simply refuse to be solved, leaving us forever to ponder what truly scratched at the door that night?